All these people were trying to teach me. They influenced me. So naturally, when the time came for me to aspire to be anything, I think it was very natural that I wanted to also be a teacher who kind of can influence others and make a difference. So teaching or academic interaction is, I think, far more beneficial to the teacher, than to the student at that point of time. Probably to me, the most fantastic equation in physics is the equation of entropy. The mere fact that information is easily available, you can just search it out, or you can ask these LLM models for answers, and they can respond. Means that I think people are getting to trust this answer without checking for the authenticity of the sources, and which is a big problem.
Welcome to the Science School, a one-shot podcast where we interview professors of the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research. I'm your host, Arpita Jena, and today we have a very special guest, a professor who is not just well known for his academic contributions, but also is a very well-known figure here on our campus. Joining us today is Professor Mitra, a researcher and professor in the Department of Physics. Now, to simply describe his expertise as physics is an understatement, because his knowledge spans across classical and statistical mechanics, electrodynamics, semiconductors, surface science, and much more. In today's episode, we'll delve into his journey as a scientist, what his life was like as a college student, his thoughts on effective communication in the field of science, and of course, the cutting-edge research he's currently working on in his lab. But first, let's get to know our guest a little better. Professor Mitra, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
Going on.
So wonderful. To begin with, could you take us back to your college days and what kind of student were you?
It's a bit difficult to tell you. I'm afraid that you'll start emulating all the tricks that I did, and that won't be very good. So what it tells you is that not a very obedient student, I must say. But I studied in college days in this college called Presidency College in Calcutta, which was under the University of Calcutta, but today is a deemed university itself. So it's a Presidency University now. It's a college which was established during the British times. So it's a very old college, and it's around I think around 200 years old now. And that's bang in the center of Calcutta. That's where I did my undergraduate education.
What inspired you to pursue physics? Was there a defining moment in your life that made you go down this path?
Yes and no, I suppose. So I was unfortunately not fixated on physics. I think I was interested in a wide lot of things. Physics was one of them, pretty high up, priority. But I was equally interested in history as well as economics. So, but my interest in physics probably stems from my grandfather, who was a telephone engineer, and was a part of the team who established Calcutta telephones at the beginning of the 20th century. And though when I met him, he was a reasonably old man, but still he was very hands-on, very hands-on. And even at home, and Calcutta during late 80s when I grew up was a place riddled with load sheddings. So every evening, absolutely methodically and with kind of absolute periodicity, it is to have power cuts every evening, and which was a bit strenuous for us in school doing our studies. So my grandfather came up with this plan that let's go out and get a couple of old car batteries from car workshops. So we got those batteries, refurbished those batteries, lead acid cell batteries, refurbished those, bought some small bulbs and made small table lamps when I was in school. So kind of, small things like this really spurs you on that you can actually achieve things yourself I obviously didn't know the chemistry of lead acid cell batteries. I didn't know the physics of a tungsten filament, but that made the bulb. It was a day before the LEDs. So I had no clue about either the physics or the chemistry of any of these objects. But nevertheless, tinkering with stuff, was an integral part of my growing up.
So, if I say your grandfather was what primarily inspired you to pursue physics, would that be?
Yes, because you see, again, as I said, it was very organic. Nobody was exactly giving me an inspiration speech any day.
Yeah,
but it was a part of my life. Things like, common day chemicals, for example, potassium permanganate, which in those days used to be used as an insecticide, I think, and then copper sulfate. There was no availability, for example, of a bottle of Fevicol. So whenever we needed glue, the most easily available glue was actually made from flour. Okay. So, or rice, smashed rice, and that was glue because it's sticky and it's starch, and it kind of, you paste it and you put it and it does dry up and sticks, so that's glue for me. The pitfall is if you use those glue and then you leave that thing, and after some time the ants will come and that thing come, and then it grows fungus and it kind of gets screwed up. Okay, so then it's not a very good glue. Okay. So then someone told me that if while you're making that glue, with either from flour or this rice paste, mix a bit of copper sulfate in it. Yeah, that kind of deters the growth of biological nonsense on it, and also deters ants and stuff from eating them up. Yeah. So therefore, I came to know that, okay, fine, copper sulfate is a brilliant blue color. Yeah. So once you get copper sulfate, once you have a battery, you know a bit about the battery, you kind of now study electrolysis with copper sulfate. You have copper deposition. So as you grow up, you see, what I'm trying to say is nobody really was doing inspiration, but it was continuous, very organic. Yeah, you explore life around you. Whatever is going on around you, you kind of go on exploring things.
So obviously another big part of your professional life is teaching.
Yes.
So what sparks your passion for it, and how do you weave that into your work with students?
So teaching, probably it is true. I mean, I had very good teachers in school. Looking back, I had very good teachers in the school that it was again in Calcutta. And those teachers were somehow I was very attracted to them from a very young age, and I suppose they made a lot of difference to my life. And particularly one gentleman, he was quite. Looking back, he was quite mad actually. Okay, so this guy was retired when I met him. Through, I don't know how I met him, but anyhow, he used to stay pretty close to my house. Okay, and and I was interested in tinkering a lot of stuff. He was old again, and so he told me that I will try to teach you things. So he started coming to my place, and I spoke to my parents, and I was in a very early age. Oh, sorry. I think my mother knew him through some agency. Okay, some either family friend or something. And so I knew him, and he came. He started coming to my house from a very young age, and he used to come to my place 7 days a week, from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Okay, and try to play with me, teach me. Yeah, and this went on till I was in class 7 or 8. Yeah. So that association, apart from my grandfather, was also pretty fantastic. Okay. So with him, I kind of, I used to play chess. I used to read Julius Caesar. I used to recite poems of Tagore. I used to do chemistry. Yeah. So he was a very dominant influence again. Yeah. And so you see, what I'm trying to say is all these people were trying to teach me. They influenced me. So naturally, when the time came for me to aspire to be anything, okay, I think it was very natural that I wanted to also be a teacher who kind of can influence others and make a difference.
Yeah. So, apart from these two dominant figures in your life, are there any historical physicists or scientists whose contributions have had a significant impact on your academic or research path?
Not directly, but I must say that the part of Calcutta where I grew up in was exactly 5 minutes from the house of J.C. Bose. Okay, 5 minutes walking distance. Which was, if I went in one direction, in 5 minutes I walked, I would reach J.C. Bose's house. If I walked for 5 minutes in a perpendicular direction, I would reach Satyajit Ray's house. Okay. If I walked 5 minutes in an angular direction, I would reach Ram Mohan Ray's house. And if I took another 45-degree turn and walked for 5 minutes, I would reach the house of a person whose name probably today is kind of complete washed out. His name is Harinath De. Okay, he was the first Indian librarian of the Indian National Library, and he could speak, if I remember correctly, 32 languages. Okay, so this is a place where I grew up in Calcutta. Okay, I obviously took everything for granted because it was my locality. You see, it was my place. Yeah. But slowly as you grow up, you do realize what these people, because many of these roads are named after of these people, yeah? And you slowly are inquisitive and you try to know why are these roads named after these people? What have they exactly done? You grow up and you go to school and then you read in the history books about them. And lo and behold, okay, this guy's house is here and that guy's house is there. So you kind of, you see, and you slowly start getting influenced. You start getting influenced, at least for me, that's what happened. You start getting influenced not only by men of science, but men of arts, yeah, men of commerce, yeah, all aspects of your life, yeah, which are very important.
Now, being a professor, has it changed your perspective on science and how?
Okay. Being a professor has changed my perspective on science to this extent that for example, again, if you look at this aspect of interacting with students, yeah, a student challenging you, be it your research student, be it a student in the class, goes on challenging you on topics, okay, which I might think at as, okay, this is very clean, this is very clear. But clearly, when I discuss with them, they have a different perspective, or they ask you back a different question, which very often only serves to clarify the clarity in my mind about the topic. So teaching or academic interaction is, I think, far more beneficial to the teacher, okay, than to the student at that point of time. The students, I think, gain benefit over a period of time. Maybe in 5 years' time, looking back, they will be able to actually say that, yes, that made the difference. Yeah. What they might get immediately is a feel-good factor. But whether that is full comprehension or not, it takes time, like everything else. But for the instructor, yeah, who is actually giving forth, yeah, this discussion, yeah, gives far more clarity. Yeah, so I definitely benefit from this whole exercise of reaching out to people. Yeah, and you face it, anywhere. Where else would you get a hostage crowd of 300 people listening to you with rapt attention? Even the politicians have to kind of, don't get that.
Yeah.
So I'm flattered.
It is a very unique perspective on the matter.
Yes.
Do you remember any particular question a student or anyone working under you has asked you that has really drastically changed your views on a subject matter?
Not offhand, but I must say which drastically changed. But the thing is that what has made a huge impact on me is that I have been now teaching for, the first student I had, was when I was in class probably 9 or 10, and I used to give these private tuitions to a class 5 kid who was actually the son of one of my school teachers. Yeah. So I've been teaching for kind of, if you take all that together as teaching, I've been teaching for quite a long time now. Okay. What is very startling to me, including myself, my generation, is that how the perspective of the students, yeah, on very similar topics, Newton's laws, they haven't changed, right? They are exactly the same. But let's say from early 90s, yeah, to 2025, yeah, how their perspective on these same physics topics, mathematics topics, including my son, who is kind of slightly younger, yeah, how their perspective and the way they have analyzed the same material, yeah, that has changed. Okay, with the advent of the internet, with the advent, and now obviously the advent of AI and everything else, I think all that has seeped into their comprehension of the topics being taught.
Now, obviously, you've had a pretty long career, and like anyone else, you must have had your own hardships and problems. So, were there ever times you questioned whether you were in the right path of your career or research, and how did you overcome these doubts?
Okay. Right path, wrong path. I think I don't know whether I have really tried to engineer my path. I don't think anybody had any great expectation from me while I was in school days. Okay, so much so the priority was that one had to grow up and earn one's living. Okay, yeah. So I have even been an apprentice in a photocopying shop. Okay, and at one point of time, that was I thought that one had to earn a vocation, learn a vocation, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, that might be a typist and a photocopying shop operator was my thing to do. Okay. Over time, that has changed from, as I told you, I became interested in economics. I've become interested in history, geography. I love all these topics, apart from sciences. Yeah. But it was probably by the end of my, my college days that I kind of made up my mind that if possible, I continue in physics. But before that, it was pretty fluid.
Now, being a student myself, the question I want to ask you is, what was the biggest academic challenge you faced as a student?
Yeah, you're asking very difficult questions. The most challenging. I don't know. I probably doing the PhD was challenging. Yeah, it is non-trivial. Yeah, it is a non-trivial prospect to actually make original work. Yeah, and I obviously I did my PhD in experimental physics. Yeah, and we went through very tough times. Yeah, not only I mean the whole bunch of us who were my lab mates and others. We had to struggle a lot to actually get to achieve the results that we were after. So it was absolutely hard work. And the typical refrain in the Institute of Science, the Department of Physics, and the faculty members were that on an average you have to put in something like 18 hours in a day to achieve anything worthwhile. Yeah. So yes, it was absolutely struggle, but we had a lot of fun. Okay. It was struggle, but it was accompanied by a lot of fun, which was really, really good.
Do you think that the challenges that your students face today is much different compared to what you did in your time?
Yeah, without doubt, it's a much more competitive world. Okay. Opportunities have increased, but so has the population, so has the demands of in every aspect of your life. Yeah. So we were still of a generation who probably this financial aspects to prove yourself was not looming absolutely large. I think today those demands are even more prominent. Yeah, to prove yourself and attain certain standards. Personally, maybe I was naive, or I was just loitering around without complete intent. Yeah. it happened.
I'm sure most of our viewers are students and would love to know about your first internship or research assistantship, and how do you think it shaped your career?
Okay, instead of telling you about my first internship, probably what was very fascinating or gave me a lot of confidence, a bit of pride perhaps, was the first sort of quote unquote research paper that I wrote while I was an undergraduate student at Presidency College. Yeah. And at that stage, even I mean, obviously, I've been teaching you electrodynamics. And believe it or not, the first time I read about electrodynamics in this present form, not really the form which is taught in probably +2 level, but the form of the fields and classical fields, and which leads to Maxwell's equation and all, I was absolutely enthralled by it. I was absolutely enthralled by it, that there could be such completeness in description of such an abstract object through mathematics. Was absolutely fascinating to me. And I have remained enthralled by electrodynamics ever since. Okay, so the first thing which I actually tackled was on the, I took very literally, for example, I have taught you the concept of field lines, yeah? So I probably took those concepts very literally. So what do the field lines do, yeah? And things like that. And my first detailed work, yeah? It's the only single author paper I have. Yeah, was when I was an undergraduate student. Yeah, and therefore I had great fun. And also probably actually writing a paper itself, and then communicating it to a journal. Yeah, getting the referee reports back. Yeah, and what the referees say, and then finally you kind of you send a reply to the referee's reports. And then finally a letter comes. There was no email in those days. So therefore, it was all by post. Yeah. And a handwritten document. I didn't have a typewriter or anything. So it was a handwritten document. And finally, one day in the post, a letter came which said that your paper has been accepted. It was absolute bliss. It was absolute bliss. I never thought one could do that at that level. So therefore, I was absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
So, is it right if I say it was the most exciting moment in your research career?
I have had other moments. I have published in very good journals, where I have been happy for myself, but also for my students. Yeah. So, but you see, this was happening at a very, early, a very young age. So therefore, I don't think you can compare those levels of happiness. It's like the first time you fall in love, it's different. Yeah. So yeah. So it was like that. It was different. Obviously, I have published better papers, more thorough papers in better journals. Yeah. But that doesn't take away or diminish, the fun and the joy I felt for that first thrill. Yeah.
So it's the happiness of like feeling it for the first time.
That's
you're
right.
Truly making a difference.
Yes. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, I don't think I care. But it gave me happiness. Yes.
Now I have a really random question, but if you had a time machine,
yes,
what moment in physics history would you want to witness firsthand?
Gosh, this is probably to me the most fantastic equation in physics is the equation of entropy. Okay, yeah, entropy, and that I would want to revisit those times and be privy to the understandings and the conversation, of Boltzmann and the others. Okay, which to me that is probably the most fantastic concept in physics. Yeah. But I'm an Indian. Okay, I'm an Indian, and I am proud to be an Indian. So probably I would also want to visit the times of J.C. Bose, Raman, and S.N. Bose. Okay, just to feel their presence, if it is possible, through the time machine, and go back. And yes, that would be really fantastic. Yeah.
Hearing about your journey as a student and what your life has been like is truly inspiring. Now, shifting gears a little, you talked about publishing for the first time. Now, beyond just doing research, an important part of being a scientist is obviously communicating that work effectively, both to peers and to the wider public. So, I'm sure many people watching right now don't know how scientific communication works. So, could you please walk us through the process of publishing in academia, and how does a researcher determine when their work is ready for publication?
Okay. Let me see. So obviously, when we write these projects, we kind of, mentally we prepare for these projects. At times we write this project, we articulate it to obtain funding. That's how academic research works. Yeah. So therefore, early on, you have a good idea of in which direction you want to go. But it is research after all. Yeah. And you're trying to generate knowledge, understanding. Yeah. So predictability is not the most, it is not the thing. Yeah. So much of the discoveries, much of the inventions, do happen serendipitously. But it is only to the trained and prepared mind who will actually realize the significance of that invention or that property or that phenomena which they are observing. Yeah. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that you go on working in these projects. Yeah. And then you slowly, the reality starts dawning on you. Yeah. You also want to say, people like many of us, we want to say a story. Yeah. We want to say a story which actually is backed up by proofs. Yeah. These are not intuitions, right? Where the science, the way we practice. Yeah. There are hardcore proofs, either experimental, theoretical, or both, which are required. So therefore, every project, it leads to a certain level of maturity, at which time, at which point, you naturally realize that, there is a story to say. Yeah. Maybe now, once you realize that there is a story to say, you have the necessary proof, maybe you do a bit more for the sake of completeness, or test your predictions. Yeah. That happens. But certainly there is, for me, a sense of realization that yes, this is a story which is worth saying. Okay. So it is never, for me, it is never gratuitous that, okay, fine, let's write it up. No. This has to be something, there has to be an honesty, there has to be something which is worth speaking about. At that stage, then you kind of, you start writing what we call papers, journal articles. Yeah. I certainly try to tell my students, my doctoral students, that you should write it yourself. Obviously, depending on how senior they are, how senior or junior, they make varied kinds of attempts. Yeah. And it is a process which goes on for a couple of months then. Yeah. And then comes the very difficult choice of which journal do you send it to. Right. And different journals have different focus. Yeah. Some are very wide journals. Some are very specialized journals. Depending on the kind of audience, that thing would be your paper would be of interest to. You try to pitch for a particular journal. Yeah. And then you kind of communicate once you have written in this very technical language. Yeah. So obviously this is not written for a layman or a lay person. Yeah. It's a very technical language, and you kind of write the whole thing up with figures and trying to explain. Yeah. And then you kind of, communicate it to the journal, which then goes through a review process. It is sent out to other scientists in your field, who can obviously comprehend your work and critically comment or critique your work. Yeah. And that can go on for one round at least, but 2 to 3 rounds, at which stage the editor of the journal takes a decision whether it is fit for the journal and one can accept it based on the reviewer's report and our rebuttals. Or they unfortunately say that, okay, fine, but after doing all this, unfortunately, we cannot accept your work for this journal.
Okay. And then you kind of again come back to the drawing board and reanalyze that, what had gone wrong, or how do you kind of reframe the story.
You talked about that the purpose of writing, like, mainly is for securing a funding.
Yes.
So,
the projects.
The projects.
Yes.
Do you think that this is particularly leading researchers right now to talk more about trending topics rather than what they actually want to research on or talk about?
Look, that I think is a part of any profession, right? If you want to make a mark, you do kind of sort of align with if I use a very crass word, whatever sells. Okay, but that by no means kind of diminishes your opportunities or your passion for doing things which are not very trendy, perhaps. Yeah. And you do write these projects. The writing the project also kind of focuses your ideas. It's not only just getting the money, focuses your ideas. You are articulating it. The moment you try to articulate or enunciate on a topic, immediately it leads to clarity. What do you want to do? How will you, it kind of a project writing, it kind of makes it very structured. You secure funding, but that doesn't mean that you only have to work on that. You've got the instruments, you have got facilities, you have got consumable money for consumables, networking, various aspects. It doesn't stop you. So nobody is going to tell you that, okay, fine, you took money to measure the electrical characteristics of that sample. Why you can't use it for another sample? Yeah. So it only enhances.
Now, social media is emerging as a platform for science communication. Do you see it as a useful tool for research, and do you think young scientists and researchers should engage in platforms like this?
I suppose the answer is yes. Okay, I suppose the answer is yes. Having said that, it is not a media which I have explored. I have a Twitter account. I have never been on Facebook. Okay, and I do have my presence on certain social media platforms. Okay, I love communicating personally. I far enjoy teaching in a class. Okay, and interacting with a lot of my students. Rather than communicating my ideas through the social media. But I do recognize technology, communication technology has completely revolutionized how people learn. And I fully appreciate that. During the COVID pandemic, where students were forced home. Okay, first couple of months, everybody was very relieved, you have nothing to do, go around. But very soon, it impacted their learning. Had it not been for this communication technology, we wouldn't have been able to hold the vast majority of the classes online. So there are definite advantages of this thing, especially in situations where resources are limited. So therefore, like the COVID pandemic, they couldn't be here on campus, but at least we could reach out to a large extent. Similarly, there are a lot of children in areas of the world where you do not have access to world-class resources. But which means that if you have material on social media, on these online platforms, you must have heard of this platform called the Khan Academy. I think it has made a fantastic MIT courses. India has today started the Swayam Prabha platform. I think it makes a lot of difference. If I can take that as an extension of the same things which goes on in social media as far as academics or education is concerned.
So, do you think it is helping to bridge the gap between the scientific community and the general mass, which exists because of technical terms or methodologies that the general mass doesn't understand?
Social media. I suppose yes, because you see, the information is becoming more accessible, which is always a good thing. Okay, which is always a good thing. But you do understand that anything which becomes very easily accessible, its valuation also decreases. Okay, so therefore there are good and bad sides of everything. There are. Because, for example, today I do realize that for the vast majority of people, including me, information is on my fingertips. I don't have to work for it. Yeah. Whereas I am still from a generation where there was no internet. Yeah. So that means if you wanted to do research or if you wanted to know about a topic, you had to spend a protracted amount of time in a library. Yeah. So obviously there are pros and cons of this interaction, the way you are interrogating and getting information.
So, do you think this accessible information is causing important topics to be, in a way, diluted?
It's not a question of, I don't think dilution is probably the right word I would use, but what I'm trying to say is that the mere fact that information is easily available, you can just search it out, or you can ask these LLM models for answers, and they can respond, means that I think people are getting to trust this answer without checking for the authenticity of the sources, and which is a big problem.
So it causes the rise of misconceptions and misinformation.
Yes, misinformation. Are they giving you the right answers? Yeah. Is the source from which that answer is drawn, is it an authentic source? Yeah. As opposed to a curated library. You see, the librarian or somebody has suggested the books. Someone has actually, it's authenticated. Yeah.
So to conclude on this topic, what changes would you like to see in how scientific research is communicated from a personal perspective?
I would certainly like to see that more scientists reach out to society. Yeah, already there is a huge thrust on societally relevant problems to be addressed by scientists, which is also known as kind of the global challenges. Climate change, energy, food. These are challenges which needs to be overcome, and already there is a focus on that. But as a part of our regular discourse, I would certainly like to see the scientists reach out to more laymen, at various platforms.
Many of our listeners are budding scientists and researchers themselves. So, based on your experiences and journey, if you could give advice to your younger self, your college self, what would it be?
Yeah, everything can be criticized on hindsight, you see. But I would say time is the biggest, most challenging commodity. Okay, so be conscious of the amount of time. We have very limited time, and I think you can do a lot. So be conscious of the time that you spend and how you are spending it. I would have certainly told my younger self that be conscious of that.
Are there any behind the scenes aspect of your research or personal experiences in physics that you feel would be valuable for your students that you don't really get to share with them in classes?
I think I could talk a lot. Okay, with most people, certainly my own students, my PhD students, they are very dear to me. So therefore, we constantly go on having informal parties and gatherings, and where we go on poking each other over every aspect of our private life. So I don't think anything is really answered.
Right. It has been a really fascinating conversation with you. Before we wrap up, I would like to quickly recap some of the key points that we discussed. We explored your journey as a college student, the challenges and lessons that shaped you early in your career, and your advice for aspiring students. Lastly, we touched on the importance of communication in the world of research and how making science accessible can benefit both the scientific community and the general public. On that note, we have reached the end of this episode of the Science Scoop. Thank you so much, Professor, for taking the time to share your knowledge, insights, and experiences with us. It has been an absolute pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and found it as inspiring as we did. If you'd like to hear more stories like this and dive deeper into the world of science, stay tuned for future episodes of The Science Scoop. Until next time, this is Arpita Jana signing off. Thank you.